Welcome back to more Behind the Scenes. Once again, I'm being joined by John Dayton in our ongoing conversation about his wonderful stories from his time in Hollywood.
Now, after the film was out and it had been, I guess, premiered in the spring, and it did really well. I get a call at home from Kate. So I'm in LA, she's in New York. Well, do you think I should do this? And I said, what? And she said, it's a movie at Warner Brothers for, I can't remember. Well, now I can't remember his name myself. Bonnie and Clyde.
Warren Beatty.
Warren. So what Warren had done, he wanted to cast Kate as his aunt in a remake of Love Affair. So I went to New York, we visited, we talked about it, and I asked her if she was comfortable with the situation. She said yes. And so I was with her for the entire shoot.
Mm.
Everyone was really, really nice to her. It was Warren basically was the director. Glenn Gordon Karen took the credit, but it was Warren. He did everything he could to make her comfortable, despite the fact he had me over to his home and asked me some advice. So I gave him some advice, and I did say we did talk about the fact that she was having trouble with her memory, and I said don't do anything more than 2 times because she's tired after that. She comes out to LA. She had a scene. It was a scene with Warren, and he was shooting Kate, and she's sitting in a sofa. And she has to say a line, rise, say another line, and cross off camera left. Or is that right? Right. That was all that she had to do. Now, the sofa was big, it was fluffy, she sank right down into it. Take one, and she said her line on the sofa. She got up, she said her line, and made her exit. It was perfect. And I heard Warren say, I think we should do this again. So he walks over to Kate, explains to her, he wants to, okay. She sits down, take 2. She says her line. Now, this time she's having a little trouble getting out of the sofa, but she gets up, she says her exit line, and she exits fine. Now, I remember the director of photography on that wonderful man, Joe said to me, Byrock said, I think he's going to ask her to do it again. And I said, oh no. I saw Kate sit in the sofa, roll camera, action. Now, she couldn't get out of the sofa. And we're rolling, and the crew is all around, and they can see that she can't get out. So without saying cut or anything, I just went over to the sofa, and I took her arm, and she said, let's go. And it was the first time and only time Katharine Hepburn ever walked off a set. Now, now everybody's like, what's going on? And especially Warren, not in anger, but not understanding what's happening here. What's happening? I felt like going to Warren and saying, don't do more than 2 takes. We rushed out. I grabbed her purse. We rushed out to the car. And I think I've told you this story before, Judy. Kate said, go, 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 go. And out from the door, it's like in an old-fashioned movie, one of those, everybody's chasing everybody else. Coming out to the car, and somebody's banging on the trunk, and Kate says, go, go, go. And I look in the rearview mirror, and there is everybody. Not everybody, but everybody. And 2 guys in suits. And of course, I knew who they were. They were the head of the studio. The 2 guys, John, and he was the head of Warner Brothers at the time. She said, go, go, go. We get to the gate, and the guard won't open the gate. Actually, I was lucky because he remembered my face because I had worked at Warner Brothers a lot and been in and out. And he was actually one of the guards when we were doing the Waltons. And I said, we got to get out of here. Now they're beginning to come around the back of the car. And Kate says, drive on, drive on. I said, we're going to break the gate. She says, drive on. She wanted me to go through the gate. And to tell you the truth, I don't think she knew why. She was like, okay. So Kenny opened the gate and away off we went. And all I could see was at that side gate, the barroom gate, these guys standing there. Well, now what do? I'm in the car with Kate. She just walked up the set of a big movie. It totally was out of her mind. What had just happened was totally out of her mind.
Wow.
I said, well, where would you like to go? Beverly Hills. She says, Beverly Hills. So we did a tour of Beverly Hills. Listen, I know where Jimmy Stewart lives, and I'm pretty sure he's home. Would you like to go there? And we'll just rap on the door. And now I had some prior experience with him, only because I had wanted him and Kate to star together in a TV movie. And then met Gloria, his wife, and he was just an angel. So we pull up in the driveway and we're sitting there, and Kate says, oh, wait a minute. Now I'm ready to jump out of the car and knock on the door, see if Gloria's there or see if he's there. She sat there and she said, I don't want to do it. And we left. And that feeling is going through me, that went through me at that time. It was kind of a nervous electricity going through me. Katharine Hepburn, Jimmy Stewart.
Wow.
So we spent a pleasant day together. We went down to MGM. Anyways, we're on the lot. We walked around. She brought memories back. And then she told me the real story of how she and Spencer Tracy met. And we walked to the exact place. And she said, this is where it happened. And this is what he said. And this is what I said. So I got the straight story from Kate. So we toured the studio and we went, where do we go for dinner? I don't remember. I do remember Army Archer calling me at home and saying, what in the world happened? And now word had gotten all over the place that Kate had walked off the set.
Yikes.
And I didn't tell him about Kate's problem. I didn't. This was a secret I kept for years, the dementia. And that old rumor that she had Parkinson's was not true. It was a condition that her grandfather had, the shaking. Anyway, you could always tell when Kate was comfortable doing anything, she would be still. I told Army what had happened because I trusted Army, and he did put it in the paper the next day in Variety, and he was very gracious about telling the story. He did not say she walked off. He just mentioned our touring and Kate's famous line about my building is taller than hers. So the movie ended. Now Kate had to go back to New York. Well, I had to be with her. Warner Brothers at that time had a Gulfstream, a big one. I flew with her back to LaGuardia. Kate was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. I walked her down to her car, which we were able to pull up on the ramp because it was on the private side of the airport, and it was snowing. And she said, please come with me to the house. I knew that I had to get back to Burbank and to Warner Brothers. And I said, I made my excuses and hugged her, and she was crying. And I flew back to Burbank, my job in mind. And when I say I have no regrets in life, that might be one. That might be one that I didn't go with her. After that, during our visits, she wanted to do another movie. Judy, I knew it was going to be her last. It had to be. So the movie was One Christmas. And it was with Henry Winkler and Swoosie Kurtz. We shot it in North Carolina. It was tough. It was really tough. You know, poor Henry. Again, we had to hold the cards up in front of Henry's face to do her close-ups. And Swoosie, I mean, it was hard on both of them, working with Kate. And also, I think that at that point, I don't think Swoosie or Henry, never talked to him about this. I should. I think that Henry and Swoosie were not really aware of how serious it was getting. It was tough getting through it, just let me say. I will tell you a funny story. On one Christmas, Swoosie, who is also a friend, Swoosie was working on a series at Warner Brothers called Sisters. I can't believe I remembered that. But what I do remember was she was on a really tight schedule. And I also remember that the company was paying for a private plane. I think it was Clay Lacy's plane to take Swoosie back and forth. So that was expensive. One evening, this does not involve Kate. This involves Henry Winkler, me, and Swoosie Kurtz. So we're shooting a scene out, and all directors, listen to me, never shoot a scene near running water. They're sitting around a fountain, and the fountains. We shot the master. It was just fine. It was getting to be very late. The fountain was behind a house that I had rented, but where the scenes all took place. Anyway, Swoosie had told me in the beginning that she had to get back for her first scenes in the morning in LA. The master was fine, but on the close-ups, we were going to do the close-ups, the water did not match. In other words, you could hear the water, but if you cut from the master to a close-up or a medium shot, it wasn't working. How do we do this? How could, because honestly, I had no money in the budget to bring people in to loop or to do any kind of voiceover stuff. There was just no money there. And Swoosie and Henry both are very busy. So it got later and later and later, fussing over this. We should have just printed the master and left it. But as we are accommodating the audio, the lights got shifted somehow. And there was a cherry picker that had this big, not an arc, but a big light on it that was backlighting the scene. They moved the light, and now suddenly the light was about 50 feet. I was way up there over a neighbor's property. Well, the neighbor shows up. This is like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not kidding. And says, "You got to pay me. Your light is on my property." Well, I had to find out who owned the air above their property and how far up you own your air. And the police came, and I got to get Swoosie on that plane to get back to her. I got to shoot those final shots. Henry got upset, not over the delay, but over the fact the guy was asking me for, I believe it was $2,500. And I had it in my pocket. I carried around like 5,000 in those days. Henry got irritated with this guy, and they got into a quarrel, which evolved into a pushing match, which evolved into, I could see Henry was getting his fist up. And it was like, oh my God. And Henry kept saying, "Don't pay him. Don't pay him." And I paid him. I had to. I had no choice. It was kind of like on the Waltons. Remember when we had to pay that guy to
The lawnmower guy, yeah.
The lawnmower in the backyard, $25. But this was different. This was many, many years later, and this was $2,500. We got it shot and got Swoosie off to the airport, and everything was fine. The final scene of the movie, what I knew was going to be Kate's last appearance in front of the camera, and it was Kate and Swoosie sitting at a table, and it was Kate telling Swoosie about living a life with no regrets, is doing what you feel is right for yourself. So that last speech was beautifully written by Dwayne Poole, and it went really well. To my recollection, Kate never used a card on that. Now, maybe Swoosie could correct me on this, but it was a beautiful last scene for Kate, and the close-up was just phenomenal. She didn't get in front of the camera, to my knowledge, ever after that. You know, we were good friends, and I called her every day. I had her phone number, the phone right next to her bed. Called her every day, and she just kept getting worse and worse. And then, remember I told you about her manager, Eric. I did ask Eric. I said, I need to come and see her. And he said, John, he was so wise. He said, John, you have your memories, and I don't think you should see her like this. I didn't go, and I'm glad I didn't go. Because these are wonderful memories, and I would not like to have seen Kate. I had this marvelous friend who I think about every day, almost every single moment. What shirt am I going to wear? I remember she would say, you know, you look good. Always do those hue, the blues and the pink. She said, oh, you look just great in those. I mean, I remember it's literally an amazing thing. And it was an amazing experience in my life to have been her friend. I knew the relationship was special.
Yeah. What a great message to take away. Those words from the movie, and as you've repeated several times, to try to do our best to live a life of no regrets. You know, if we can do that, then.
And be comfortable with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you again for sharing these just amazing stories.
I felt during the whole time that Kate and I were together, and the time that, especially that we were working together, this is work. I would hear side comments, never directly to me, but side comments about, why does she continue to work? She should have quit a long time ago. They didn't want to see her get old. And I think every big star has gone through this. Kate worked because that was her life. The answer to all those snide comments of all those years, and I heard them, it's your fault. You're making her work. She should have done it. She should have retired long ago. No, I'm sorry. She needed to be needed. And she needed to be working. And I have no regrets over that fact. I didn't make her work. It was her idea to work. So, I got that off my chest. I've always wanted to say that. We need to respect our elders. And we need them to give back to us as much as we give back to them.
Thank you for joining me for this segment with John Dayton as we talk about things that happen in Hollywood and behind the scenes. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.